Yo guys, how's everyone doing? This is your guy Assassin Dave. Welcome back to another Dave Talk. Today we want to address something that's very important, and we kind of partially addressed it last time in our previous video talking about what a carry most desire from their support. And today we will talk about what the support most desire from their carry. Now, before we talk about what a support's most desire from their carry, we first have to know exactly what carry is. Carry is a player who is going to carry their team on their back. Okay, there are multiple different type of carry. There's magic damage carries, there's physical damage carries, and you can do this from multiple roles. You can do it as a side laner, you can do it as a mid laner. Frequently right now in the current meta, we see a hyper carry strategy. It's 1-3-1, 3 put down mid, 1 on top, 1 on bottom. Now personally, I think this strategy might change as the meta keep on evolving. We see the new project next coming up. We might see a jungler and a support and a mid lane standalone mage. All that can be possible, but at the present moment, the most popular strategy is your 3 people staying in mid lane, with 1 person getting every single farm, the mid lane wave, the jungle resources, and probably even bottom lane wave as well. Like, it's just crazy amount of farm. So that person is going to be the carry that we are using in this video. The number one thing that a support most desire from a carry is do not initiate a team fight alone. Okay, actually do not initiate team fight at all as a carry player. Imagine an Eastern Shin player jumping into enemy team 5-man and initiating a team fight. We call that stupidity, all right? We call that suiciding, and you get your team so tilted because your tank is getting ready to engage, and all of a sudden your marksman is already dead. The team fight is not gonna happen. You already lost that team fight, right? And we see that happening multiple times. You have carry players, either gonna be a Lunox or a Harris. They see someone, they get trigger happy. Because early game, they might got fed, they might get a little bit of farm, and they just jump in because they thought they're invincible. And what happens is enemy team have a Kadra or some hard quad control like Franco, suppression ultimate, lock them down, enemy team just beat them up. And all of a sudden, the 10,000 gold advantage you worked so hard for just disappeared because the carry player cannot hold their fingers, all right? So I urge all the carry players right here, if you're watching this video, if you're listening to this Dave Talk, make sure you wait patiently for your team to engage and then you follow up. You do not want to initiate team fights. Too much risk with little reward to reap. Number 2 is don't check bush alone. Actually, do not check bush at all, period. The most frequent mistake that carry player in this game make are walking towards an area of unknown without having their tank, their support player checking the bush first. You see competitive players, at least good competitive players, in any MOBA, if they want to rotate to top lane, you usually follow a special sequence of actions, right? They will tell their team, let's go to top lane or let's go take the turtle. And the tank player will then go to the area to scout every single bush to make sure every single danger area is cleared before the carry player actually follow their footsteps. Otherwise, the carry player, you're better off sitting under a tower and do nothing. At least at the time, you won't feed. If you feed and die, you're gonna wait for 30 seconds, 20 seconds without getting farms. Your team gonna lose resources, and enemy team gonna snowball, and you're gonna close the gap of the farm lead you might possibly had. But if you just stay on a tower and do nothing, at least you will survive, right? And maybe possibly farm some small camps in the jungle and wait for the next minion waves. The most important thing you gotta remember is, if you don't know any danger areas, don't even attempt to check. This also applies a lot of times to side laners. Side laners have a very, very important role, which is not dying, because side lane is the furthest lane in the map. With that being said, if silent dies, they will lose a lot of lane pressure because enemy team can take advantage and push the lane, shove the lane, and rotate to other lanes and put pressure all across the entire map. So it's very, very important for silence to not die. Now, how do you do that? You look at a minimap. If you can't see where enemy teams are and you're split pushing, just wait patiently in the bush. Do not go check bushes yourself because it might be too dangerous unless you're playing heroes that you know can get away pretty easily. For example, you're playing a hero like a Takadra, you're playing a Grog side lane, right? You know you can use their ultimate just to dash away, or you have some sort of immunity, you can just get away, fine. But for most fighters, it's very crucial for you to look at the minimaps and think, right? Can I split push, or is it better for me to stay put in the bush and wait for the better opportunity, wait for me to see where enemy teams are, and then jump in, clear the wave, and push a tower. Point number 3 that we want most from a carry player is know when to follow up and engage, and don't run away. Well, at least most of the time. What we frequently see is a tank player or a support player would engage, and the carry player all of a sudden butterfly. And what I mean by butterfly is they're like kids. Basically, they're doing something and they see a butterfly. Oh, a butterfly. And they start chasing the butterfly and forget about what they wanted to do. As a carry player, it's very, very important for you to have a clear goal in mind. But when the team fight is happening, when your tank is taking the damage, you do not want to leave them alone. Unless you know if you join them, you're going to die for sure. But if your team has engaged, if your entire team has engaged, it's very important for you to follow up the engage and dish damage. A lot of time, the team fight become imbalanced, and then the carry player blame the tank because they're like, oh, the tanks are feeding. Actually, a lot of times the tank actually engaged pretty well, but the carry player just didn't follow up, and their tank player just get poked out by the enemy team, and they have nowhere to run. Imagine Kufa jumping in, getting 3 people knocked up, the carry player going in, do some damage. All of a sudden, they see a red buff coming out. The butterfly is like, oh, I'm gonna go take my red instead, and just forget about the whole team fight. Kufa stay in the front, does not have any support, does not tanking damage for free, and eventually die. That's usually what happens. So it's very, very important for a carry player to look at what's happening, follow up the engages, and don't throw away your tank player like trash. Another thing that I want to talk about is when to farm, when not to, because it's closely tied to follow up engages. I got to ask this question multiple times. Dave, like, when do I engage? When do I farm as a carry player? Well, you would know if you play the carry character a lot of times. Let's say if you're playing Ling. It's very important for you to get your first Berserker Fury. It's very important for you to get a Blade of Heptaseas before you can do any damage, right? So a lot of people prefer Endless Battle. Sure, you need 2 items. Another example, when you're playing 1-1, it's very important for you to finish your Corrosion Scythe and then partially another item before you can do any damage at all. Unless enemy teams are really, really low and use ultimate and then clean up, right? Or when you're playing Claude, it's very, very important for you to get Demon Hunter Sword before you can do any damage whatsoever. That's why you will see frequently character like Claude, character like Hayabusa, they use their ultimate just to clear wave for them to get level 8 and for them to hit those power spikes. And that before then, you're always farming. Okay, you always make sure you're efficiently improving your farm. Unless you can KS, but if there's no KS opportunities, go back to your jungle, go back to your lane, make sure you efficiently clear every single resources on the map to increase your farm. But right after that, if you already hit those power spikes, your team are fighting, you want to be present. You want to be snowball, turning that farm into something more productive, more irreversible kind of lead for your team. Okay, it's very important at that point, after you hit your power spike, to join. Now, on the same token, there are a lot of tank players or support players who have no idea what carry's power spikes are. They constantly engage non-stop and then just force the carry to join the team fight. That are actually so stupid. Because imagine a Ling at level 4 and with a Kufra, right? An enemy team have a Grok, they have Eastern Shin, they have probably Lunox or whatever. And a Kufra will just engage enemy team non-stop, imagining their Ling will follow up. If the Ling doesn't follow up, he will blame the Ling, he will blame the carry player. You're so dumb, you don't follow up. It's actually not the case, right? What is a Ling going to do against their composition? They're so tanky, they have a lot of mobility, and Ling does no damage unless he hits all the core items. So it's very important for a support player at the same time to understand the power spike of the carry players and help them safely transition into that power spike and then win the game eventually. But for carry players, remember one thing you have to identify for all your characters is power spike, which is the item that I need, that I have to grab in order for me to be effective in the game. But after that's done, you can just go ahead and eliminate enemy team. Like for another example, Lancelot. Right? Lancelot doesn't really need items for him to do insane amount of damage at level 4. And the same applies for Helcurt and many other heroes. The point is you just have to understand what are the power spikes. Is it really levels? Is it really abilities? Is it really items for the carry players? And then you can decide whether to join team fights and or continue farming. Now, another point that's closely tied to when to farm and when not to, understanding your power spike, is push objectives. Because those objectives help you win the game, right? Getting Lord, getting Turtle, help you get more experience, more gold, help you get more ability, more leverage to push enemy towers and eventually end the game. We see a lot of carry players, they win the team fight because amazing engages from their tank, from their support, from their team, and right after that, instead of pushing the mid lane tower, instead of getting the Lord, they go straight to the red buff and try to get the red buff. The red buff are going to stay there, they're not going to move, but this is the one time that you can push enemy tower, you take it, okay? The carry players, if you're listening to this, make sure you look at the minimap for objectives. That's number one goal for carry players. You have to understand why your team is giving you the resources, because after you kill the enemy team, after you win the team fight, the carry players are usually the only ones with the ability to push any sort of objectives. Imagine like a Grok or a Kufa or a Hylos pushing a tower. It's gonna take them 10 years. But imagine the same scenario with Roger or Eason Shin, right? They can take down any objectives like Turtle, Lord, Tower in seconds. That's the difference. And that's why you're called the carry player and they're not. So once you win a team fight, look at the minimap, where is the minion wave at, and which resources on the map can I take. Do not go back to your jungle right away. You can first take the objective and then roll backwards and then farm our jungle and then reset and get ready for the next wave of push. Now the next point I'm actually personally guilty of is don't be toxic. Alright, when I play solo queue, I can be more toxic, especially in a server. And when you play solo queue, I got matched with actual epic level players, and I'm mythical glory. At the same time, the opponent are also 3 mythical glory trios. Like, you just feel so desperate, you know, like frustrating. What do you do at that point, right? You got 3-4 epics on your team. You have to carry enemy team of trio mythical glories. It's not like I like to give up sometimes. It's just games like that derive all the gaming experience away from this game. Like, you just don't want to play the game anymore. It's like, why? How is this fair? When you play the game, you're expected to take on the risk of enemy team might be better or worse, you might be the best, it doesn't matter. But at least it's basic to give everybody a fair environment to play a competitive level game. And in solo queue in Mobile Legends, because the ladder is so still garbage, it's so unfair a lot of times, so I tend to be toxic. But you have to understand at the end of the day, being toxic does not help your game. In fact, the more toxic you are, the worse you feel in that game. And not only you're gonna make your teammates feel bad, and they're gonna play even worse, and you're gonna have even a more horrible gaming experience. So don't be toxic, be more positive, or at least just be quiet and play your game. For me, on live stream, I try to hold back my anger or frustration as much as I possibly can. Next time, if you're having the same problem, feel free to point it out, and make sure to get your 1 butt cheek or double butt cheek or even twerking, shaking butt cheek membership, so you can get a 30-day hassle-free, 100% trash talk immunity card. At that point, you can say whatever you want to Dave, 100% protected. Last but not the least, what a support want most from their carry players is to watch Dave's videos and live streams. Okay, it's very, very important because we have a lot of videos telling carry players what to do at what point of the game. We have a lot of guides for a lot of heroes, the secrets that's unveiled in a detailed videos. So make sure you go check them out, like, subscribe, and turn that bell on to all notification bells. And with that, Assistant Dave signing off. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye now. Just for the thrill of it.